So we need a cluster, and we decided that this cluster would be Kubernetes. So what exactly is Kubernetes? I'm going to give a couple of Wikipedia-style definitions before we dive in. So Kubernetes is a container management system. Okay, great. It runs and manages containerized applications on a cluster. You probably already knew that much. So what does that really mean? I'm going to give a more functional definition. What can I do with Kubernetes? So first, a bunch of basic things, and basically what we're going to cover today. Let's say I have an e-commerce website, and so I have an API, and then I have a front end. So I can deploy 5 containers, like 5 replicas, using the same container image, like for my API. Then I can put a load balancer, an internal load balancer for that API. Then I can deploy, let's say, 10 containers for the web front end, and the web front end is going to talk to the API containers over the internal load balancer. Then I want to put a public-facing load balancer for the web service. And then it's Christmas or Black Friday or something like that, and I have a traffic spike, so I need to add more containers. So I want to easily, instead of having 5 and 10 containers, I want to go like to 50 containers of each. And then since my software is written by humans, and humans are imperfect, then my software has bugs, and I need to release a new version. So I want to replace like Webfront 1.3 with Webfront 1.4. And I don't want to shut down everything while I do that. I want to do that with as little impact on my website as possible, because this is the moment in the year when I'm doing like most of my revenue. So shutting down everything and having a maintenance window is completely out of the question. So Kubernetes will help me to do all these things basically. Now here is a list of more complex things that we can do with Kubernetes. We can do some auto scaling. So instead of me deciding, oh, I want 50 containers, I want Kubernetes to make a smart decision depending on maybe resource usage or latency or something like that, and automatically pick the right number for me. I want to do blue-green or canary deployment. Blue-green deployment, one example would be, I'm going to update both the front end and the back end at the same time, but I'm going to make a breaking change. So instead of updating like one by one, kind of progressively, I need the upgrade to happen in lockstep. So a blue-green deployment in that case would be, I'm going to deploy an entire copy of the stack. Like I keep my production running with like 10, 20, 50 containers, whatever, and I create an entire copy with the new version of the stack. And once it's ready, I switch over the traffic at the level of the load balancer to the new version of the stack. The advantage is that I don't end up with a mix of old and new requests. Another advantage is that if something goes wrong, instead of being like, oh, shoot, I need to roll back, so all the containers I had upgraded, now I need to downgrade them. Well, if I do blue-green, when I switch to the new version, I still have the old version around. And so if something goes wrong, instantly I can just like switch back traffic again at the load balancer level. I can assign priorities to my workloads, and then when the cluster is out of capacity, Kubernetes can use these priorities to know who can stay and who should be evicted from the cluster. So I could have, for instance, some lower priority things, and then when I have a traffic spike, the lower priority things just go away. I can run not only stateless web services and API servers and so on, but also stateful services like message queues, databases, etc. I can do some fine-grained access control. So, for instance, I'm the administrator of the cluster, so I can do everything. But then I want to give access to a team of developers, and I only want them to be able to access to like these specific containers. This other team should be able to access like these other containers. That other team is like my analytics team, and so I want them to access everything, but in read-only, etc., etc. We can integrate external services, so use Kubernetes, but to manipulate things that live outside of Kubernetes. The last item I've put is automating complex tasks with operators. You know, when we deploy like a replicated database, even something classic like a SQL primary, secondary, it often requires a lot of manual intervention. I need to provision the primary and then the replica, and then when the primary has a problem, I need to promote the replica and inform my applications to connect the replica and set up a new replica, etc., etc. So there is a mechanism in Kubernetes called operators to encapsulate and automate all these things.